Dear students, welcome to Swayam Shiksha. This is Ram Sudhir. Today's video, basically we are going to decode the essay paper. In fact, we are going to focus on few important essays and we'll try to understand the approach of these essays. So let's go ahead with our first discussion. Yesterday there was this essay which says, history is a series of victories won by the scientific man over the romantic man. Now, such essays have become a trend, that is, philosophical essays have become a trend since last 2 years. Now, what is the approach for these essays? First and foremost, we have to identify the keywords there in the essay. For example, in this particular essay, we have one keyword is the scientific man, and the second keyword is the romantic man. So we should understand what is the basic difference between a scientific man and a romantic man. For example, a scientific man is more rational. A scientific man has a scientific approach with respect to achieving his objectives. A romantic man is more emotional, more idealistic, is more of a dreamer. So this is the basic difference which we should understand. And after understanding this difference, for such essays, to make these essays more interesting, we can think of stories in the introduction.
Sure I understand. Is there something else I can help with?
The stories like, for example, we can talk about the heliocentric theory, that is the conflict between the heliocentric theory, that is Copernicus versus Church. So Church initially has rejected the theory of heliocentrism, and it has almost gone to the extent of punishing Galileo or Copernicus, who were talking about the heliocentric theory. But ultimately, it is a scientific man or the scientific thought process that has won over the church or the religious fundamentals. This is one example which we can think of or start off with for such particular essays. We can also think about communism versus capitalism, or the impact of industrial revolution. Those countries which have benefited because of industrial revolution. Now, these are the countries which believed in the principles of capitalism. Though communism looks good on the face of it, communism is more idealistic. It is less practical in nature. It is more of a romantic thought. Why? Because in communism, when we are talking about equal societies, where people work according to their capacities, but they are paid according to their needs, what happened is, definitely people will not put out their 100% effort with respect to achieving the objectives which are laid. So that is the reason even today we find a success of capitalism over communism, though communism looks to be more idealistic. This is also an aspect which clearly shows that a scientific approach or a scientific man has won over the romantic man, which the essay is talking about. So these two stories or similar kind of stories can create an impact on the examiner's mind when we talk about such essays. So rather than just defining what the topic is initially, it is always better to come up with a story which will directly hit the topic. Then once we have explained the story, in the second paragraph, we can think of defining these terms related to the essay. That means we are going to decode this essay in the second paragraph. That is a direct decoding of the essay in the second paragraph, where I will try to explain who is a scientific man and who is a romantic man, and why scientific man has won over the romantic man. So scientific man is somebody who uses logic, who can quantify things better, who is less emotional and more practical. Whereas the romantic man focuses on his emotions. He is more irrational and idealistic in nature. But at the same time, the emotional man has bigger dreams. He's a dreamer without a specific strategy, but he dreams with respect to achieving goals. Or we can talk about something like he is more of emotional with respect to certain aspects in life. So this is how I define in 3 lines. This is how I decode the essay in the second paragraph. So this is what you see here in this particular slide here, the second paragraph. Then in the third paragraph, we can think of writing something like, what are we going to do, or what are we going to write in the subsequent paragraphs as and when our essay is going to evolve. So can I come up with making my essay more coherent? Coherence is something like, can I bring in different dimensions to the essay, which can be interlinked? Can I link different paragraph appropriately? This is what I call it as coherence. Can there be a coherence for a vague philosophical essay? Yes, definitely there can be a coherence. So this coherence comes up by coming up with different components and linking these components as far as this essay is concerned. So when we are linking these components, we have to remember the topic of the essay. The topic of the essay has to be kept in mind while we are framing our subtopics related to the essay. So let's try to understand through an example here. So here we'll try to see here in the subsequent paragraph, we are going to explore what? First, we'll try to explore why a scientific man was more victorious over over a romantic man, or why a logical man was more victorious over a emotional man. So when we talk about human evolution process itself, or the sapien or human being from time immemorial, he was the man who has used his rational brain better than the animals. And that is the reason today we find him at the top of the food chain. This is what we have to understand. So when it comes to invention of fire, which other animals could not do, it can be because of reasons like development of brain, etc. But what we should understand is a weak human or a weak sapien is today able to dominate the food chain is mainly because of his application of logic or scientific temperament. So that has made us stand today on top of the world or top of the globe or top of the civilization, in fact. So this is what we have to observe. So a scientific man was able to quantify things better. A scientific man will follow something like cost benefit analysis. Cost benefit analysis, he knows how to analyze things better. He focuses on more of action. He is not just going to dream about the results, but he gets into action. No result can be achieved unless and until we get into action. Oh, this is what is done by the scientific man. And there is less emotion. When there is less emotion, there is more practicality and more logic. Automatically, there will be a chance for increasing efficiency. So these are some reasons which you can observe. Other than these reasons, the scientific man, once he fixes the goal, he directs all his efforts towards achieving this goal. So when we talk about any scientific innovations today which we have achieved, for example, earlier when there was cholera or when there was something like a Spanish flu, when more than half the population of Spain was completely dead, people were thinking that this was something like a disgrace or something like a God given disaster. And nobody could understand what it is. And everybody started praying to the God that such things should not happen in the future. But later on, through the scientific achievements, we've understood that these viruses or these bacteria are responsible for these aspects. And then we went on to innovate, went on to find out vaccine. This is how we were able to even find out, eliminate smallpox or find out cure for cholera, etc. So the observation is, as and when society started evolving, initially when we could not know the reason, we believed more into emotions, or we can talk about religious emotions, and we were blaming it on the outside aspects which we could not figure out. But today, once we have understood it through a scientific logic, we've started finding out solutions for these diseases. So all these inventions, all these innovations are a clear victory of a scientific man over a romantic man, or a logical man over an emotional man. So not only that, when it comes to democratic institutions, everybody believes that everybody should have rights. But unless and until we come up with systems in place, for example, when we talk about democratic institutions here, unless and until you have a proper scientific electoral procedure in place, we cannot in fact protect the rights of people, or we cannot protect the vulnerable sections in the society. So this is something which we can understand. In the recent movies also, we can observe that those tribals who did not have something called as voting rights were completely exploited. So it becomes very important that you include everybody, that you bring in inclusiveness in the electoral process in such a manner that it enhances something like inclusiveness in the democratic approach. So this is what a proper electoral process can do. So that means it's not just about science, It's not just about lifting societies above a particular limit. It's not about crossing over superstitions like sati. Every area with respect to vaccine, to disease, to scientific approach with respect to the democratic institutions, we find that the scientific man has definitely won over the romantic man. So whether it is disease like cholera, as I've written here, or whether it is smallpox, whether it is Spanish flu, or the romantic man thinks about reaching the moon, or from the beginning, our religions were basically focusing on sanctifying life after death, or there's something greater to achieve after life. So we did not believe in something like extending our lives. So science believes that life is out here, and how do we extend our lifespan? This is something which we could observe in terms of doubling our life expectancy. Doubling of life expectancy is a result of scientific achievements rather than emotional dreaming or thinking about life after death or thinking that there is something better that is going to come after death. So we were trying to accept death or we were trying to reject death. We were not trying to fight death. This concept of fighting death is what a scientific man has done. And this has led to increase in our lifespan or increase or doubling our lifespan. So this is something which you can observe. That means an aspect like longevity is also a victory of scientific man over and above an emotional romantic man. So this is some observations which you can see. So another important dimension in this essay we can think of is what are the main factors that will determine in a society or a particular individual that he becomes more of a scientific man rather than a romantic man. So I can also talk about what really influences, what really can have an impact on a person's thought process or molding him into a scientific man rather than a romantic man. So here one direct impact can be culture and family. So culture, family or parenting and upbringing basically where there is less of scientific approach or more of an emotional approach or a religious approach which you find will obviously have a direct impact on the thought process of the people. So we can give examples like COVID, where it was becoming difficult for the government, in fact, in terms of motivating people to use mask. So mask is something like a scientific approach which can prevent, but people were thinking about something different rather than using mask. Now, this is a clear example which you find generally in developing countries where scientific temperament is very important and which has to be inculcated from the childhood in schools. So this is something which you can observe. Along with that, today there is spread of information technology. We have access to science and technology, and we are able to know what is happening across the globe. This is an influential factor which can motivate people to become more rational, more logical, etc. You're able to observe what is happening in Europe. You're able to observe the achievements in the developed world, or this gives a click of a button is able to give you what is happening around you. And this will not only bring in scientific thought process, but also they have evolved scientific approaches like right to information, etc., to really know what is happening in the government or the governance policies, etc. So all this is a result or of IT or information technology, that is knowing about other countries, their systems, how they have developed their systems, etc. Another important factor that can affect is the necessity is mother of all inventions. So when there is a need that strikes a civilization, that strikes a country, when there is a necessity. So, for example, earlier a vaccine it would have taken around 15 years to invent a vaccine. Now for COVID, we have done it within a span of 2.5 years, which is a great achievement by the science. Or this is a necessity. Along with necessity is the mother of invention. You're put into certain circumstances where you're forced to use your brain faster, where you're forced to innovate faster. So that is also important, or that plays a critical role. Along with that, of course, there are countries which have better economic and financial resources, which can spend money on research and development. So they have this scientific temperament. And but those countries like the African nations still believe in more emotions. So financial aspect also plays an important role with respect to building a scientific man or a romantic man. Similarly, the value systems of the society. Value systems of the society, there are certain societies which still believe in certain values, and these value systems can be beneficial or they can go negative. So either they can push in scientific temperament, or either they can erode scientific temperament in a society. So these are some factors. So this is the second part of the essay. First, we have talked about why a scientific man will win over a romantic man. Then, what factors can definitely affect a scientific man over a romantic man? This is what is another part of the essay which we have to think about. Then we can also talk about why there is a need for a romantic man. Is it that a scientific man going to be always successful? Now, this is the other side of the essay. So this you cannot write much because this is not directly in line with the essay. So here I'm saying, why do you need a romantic man in the present current scenario? Or are there any circumstances where a romantic man can win over a scientific man? So this is what I'm talking about here. So here, for example, a romantic man is somebody who can dream bigger, or he can have ambitions which are illogical. But today, those illogical ambitions have become true. So we never thought that there will be something like on WhatsApp innovation, or we never thought that we can reach US, we can travel at such a faster pace, we can fly and travel to US in just 2 days. Maybe tomorrow, in 2 minutes, there can be an innovation where I can move from India to US. It looks quite irrational or quite emotional today, but if it is made a reality, we keep on saying that it's a scientific achievement. But these dreamers, these idealists, they are the people who sow the seeds of innovation. So that is the reason there is a need for romantic man who have irrational thoughts probably, but at the same time they become rational tomorrow through scientific achievements. So that means there is somewhere a need for an emotional man or a romantic man or a dreamer. Along with that, these romantic mans have something like emotion. Today, if everything is driven by science, in the increasing materialistic world, we are becoming more and more mechanical. Emotions also become very important to bring in inclusiveness. If I have to talk about empathy, if I have to talk about compassion, these things are something that can get eroded if you have scientific approach for human development also. Without understanding the plight of farmers, without understanding the pain of vulnerable sections, I cannot have a scientific approach to solve their problems in developing countries like India. So you need something like an emotional aspect. You need people who can understand their emotions and then create solutions for their problems. Only then countries can, like India, can move people or solve problems. So here what I want to say is aspects like empathy or compassion, or when we talk about environmental protection, for example, with the scientific man through industrial revolution, he was completely going ahead and diluting. He was completely going ahead and diluting something like the environment, etc. Now, what becomes important here is this protection of environment, or thinking that other creatures are also as important as humans. Just because you have a scientific brain, you cannot take away lives of other creatures. This impact of wider thought process comes from a romantic angle or comes to a romantic man, which becomes very crucial in the today's era. So what I want to say is today there is a need for a combination of a saint and a scientist. I take a saint as a romantic man, a scientist as somebody who is more rational and logical. Or we need people like Jonas Salk who can innovate and come up with vaccines for polio, but he was a person who did not patent his vaccine. So he is somebody like a saint and a scientist. We can also think of people like Sadhguru, we can take him as a mystic or somebody who's trying to drive people's emotions to achieve scientific objectives related to save soil, etc. So this can be a thought process, or this can be a conclusion. I hope you have liked the video, but it becomes very important. You can push your suggestions in the comment box, or if you're writing an essay, you can post it in the comment box. You can post it in the comment box because we can have a detailed discussion on other essays also. So if you like this essay, if you want further discussions, please do comment in the comment box, and please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. Signing off. Thank you.